You still beg for approval, that's your surrender. Stop explaining. Every excuse broadcasts weakness and hands your power to predators who will eat you alive. Chapter 1, Reframe. Silence as Strategy. You have been trained to fill silence as if it were an obligation. Schools, families, workplaces, each in its way taught you that explanation equals moral hygiene. If people understand you, they will accept you. That training created a reflex, and reflexes are expensive. They leak power. This chapter reframes silence from a social omission into an operational instrument. Silence is not the absence of information. Silence is a calibrated signal that shapes what other people must do next. Begin with the central reframe. Explanations are not default moral acts. They are transfers of currency. When you justify, you convert private posture into public data. That data is then processed by others to constrain you. Silence, conversely, forces the environment to act first or to operate on assumptions. Both outcomes are advantageous. If they act, they reveal intent. If they assume, they often assume conservatively, giving you room to maneuver. Either way, you gain information without paying with your vulnerability. Visualize silence as a surgical instrument. A surgeon does not narrate while operating. The operation requires focus, precision, and minimizing unnecessary movement. Words are movement. Each word risks an error, bleeds advantage, or invites correction. Talk only when the words change the set of possible outcomes in your favor. Otherwise, withhold. This mental model turns every potential explanation into a utility calculation. What will this explanation buy, and what will it cost? Silence is also a battlefield formation. Armies that broadcast plans invite ambush. People who reveal motives invite exploitation. Maintain controlled silence as a formation that forces opponents to hypothesize. Hypotheses create openings. They suggest priorities, reveal anxieties, and trigger premature moves. You do not merely withhold, you weaponize ambiguity. The social machinery that prefers clear narratives must either act to reduce uncertainty or accept the friction ambiguity imposes. Both are leverage. Make the reframe operational with micro-habits. First, install the micro-delay. Count inward for 3 before responding to any request for justification. This short interval breaks the pattern impulsive talkers rely on, and it signals deliberation. Second, practice minimal fact responses that are declarative and boundary-oriented. Remove qualifiers, avoid subordinate clauses. Third, convert requests for explanation into conditional offers. Explanation will be delivered only when the requester provides a measurable return, such as a specific decision metric, resource, or concession. These habits formalize silence into a repeatable posture. Test this in low stakes to build evidence. Try withholding explanatory detail in a meeting or an online thread where you usually over-explain. Observe who rushes to fill the gap, who sharpens their tone, and who retreats. Log those responses. They are not social rebukes, they are intelligence. The behavior of others under ambiguity reveals their roles. Controllers will escalate, collaborators will ask purposefully, opportunists will probe for advantage. The data you collect in routine interactions becomes a map to exploit in strategic moments. Finally, change the internal story that triggers explanation. Replace "I must be understood" with "I choose when to be understood." This is not sentimental, it is functional. You will still communicate when the cost-benefit favors disclosure, but disclosure becomes a scheduled, conditional act, not a reflexive surrender. This identity shift is the engine that makes the reframe permanent. Silence becomes the default, and explanation becomes the exception you control. Implement these steps deliberately. Reframe your language, talk in decisions, not narratives. Practice the micro-delay until it is automatic. Keep a short ledger of every time you withhold and the behavioral intelligence you gathered. That ledger is the proof that silence is not absence. It is a strategy that converts patience into positional advantage. Chapter 2, The Core Mechanism. Information as Currency. Treat each explanation as a deliberate payment. In social economies, information is neither free nor neutral. It moves value. When you give reasons, you transmit data about your preferences, constraints, fears, and internal processes. Those data points reduce the unpredictability of your behavior and thereby reduce the bargaining space around you. Unpredictability is a strategic asset because it forces others to account for potential moves. Predictability is a liability because it allows others to preempt and constrain you. Start with the psychological mechanics. Explaining simultaneously: 1. Signals internal states, neediness, uncertainty, compliance, and 2. Supplies updatable facts that others use to restructure interactions with you. Humans are pattern machines. They prefer to minimize cognitive load by building models of others. Each explanation helps them refine that model. Once modeled, you are easier to manipulate, micromanage, or displace. Withholding information denies them that easy certainty and forces higher effort responses from your interlocutors. Either they act and reveal themselves or they retreat. Both outcomes return information to you without payment. Define the observable reaction set you will monitor when you withhold. Rush to fill, someone steps in with their own narrative. Escalation, they pressure or attack to extract data. Retreat/concession, they accept ambiguity and allow you to keep leverage. These are not merely behaviors. They are signals about relative power, uncertainty tolerance, and underlying incentives. Record and map them. Operationalize information as currency with 4 core microprotocols. Microdelay. The foundational timing device. Pause 3 counts before any explanatory impulse. That pause converts emotional compulsion into strategy. Minimal fact. When forced to respond, provide a single-line, unemotional declaration that clarifies immediate status and imposes a boundary. That's not for discussion, or we prioritized X. Facts anchor rather than litigate. Conditional offer. Convert explanation into a tradable asset. I'll explain if we structure this discussion around decision criteria A and B. You convert extraction into mutual utility. Redirect probe. Convert curiosity into motive testing. Answer the ask with a question that forces the asker to state their intent and expose their leverage. Why do you need that? Is a negotiation opener. When to spend information. Not all moments are equal. Spend when you can gain decisive control of narrative outcomes, e.g., preventing reputational catastrophe, when the recipient is a genuine gatekeeper whose cooperation yields measurable benefit, or when you can receive concrete concessions in exchange, access, reduced scrutiny, commitment. Outside of those states, default to reserve. Prepare countermeasures for interrogation strategies that extract by charm, guilt, or staged curiosity. Use reverse projection. Respond to motive rather than question, to redirect extraction. Use deflection plus test to require justification from the asker before you comply. Use tactical disclosure, a single, frame truth that gives them enough to stop probing while maintaining core leverage. Create a feedback loop. Each withheld explanation is data. Catalog the behavioral responses, update your map of who extracts and why, and refine your conditional offers and boundary lines. Make the currency metaphor explicit in your mind. If you would not spend $10 for the intelligence you would gain by an explanation, do not spend the explanation. The end state is a disciplined economy of information. You no longer apologize, clarify, or over-justify for social comfort. You trade explanations like a strategist trades rations. Sparingly, conditionally, and always with an eye on positional advantage. Once you treat information as currency, the social world starts paying you respect because you stop making the resource freely available. Chapter 3, Archetypes and Traps. The Appeaser, the Interrogator, the Predator. Human interaction is algorithmic if you know the common patterns. Recognizing archetypes reduces complexity into tactical templates. When you withhold explanation, 3 operatives will surface: the Appeaser, the Interrogator, and the Predator. Each plays a distinct role in extracting information. Each has a signature set of behaviors and a predictable counter protocol. Your work is to categorize, respond, and archive the interaction. The Appeaser, signature and objective. Appeasers are soft, conciliatory, and compulsive in smoothing conflict. They over-explain to maintain harmony and to secure acceptance. In groups they model explanatory behavior. Their function is to normalize vulnerability. They are not primary threats, but their social contagion makes your restraint look anomalous and suspect. Counter-protocol, mirror minimalism. Offer short, factual replies and do not validate their soothing attempts with explanations. Their overgiving reveals internal needs you can later use to trade for loyalty or silence. Use silence to make their soothing efforts visible and thereby transactional. The Interrogator, signature and objective. Interrogators are curious on the surface but methodical in function. Rapid-fire questions, clarifying traps, and insistence characterize them. Their aim is to turn your words into constraints, documented statements, obligations, or reputational anchors. Counter-protocol, demand purpose before answers. Convert their questions into decision metrics and apply the conditional offer. When necessary, use tactical disclosure. Provide a precise, controlled, and forward-looking truth that diffuses further questioning without ceding leverage. Always anchor with boundary language. The Predator, signature and objective. Predators bait and escalate. They provoke to make you reactive. They exploit emotional leakage and then weaponize it. Predators want you transparent because transparency is exploitable. Counter protocol: treat them like an opponent. Silence is your shield. If you must respond, use minimal fact plus a calibrated consequence. Avoid engaging emotionally. Treat provocations as data to be logged rather than problems to be solved in real time. Operational drills convert recognition into automatic response. First, the 10-second classification. At the start of an interaction, identify the dominant operative. Use cues like tone, question density, and emotional valence. Second, script drilling. Prepare 5 unemotional lines per archetype: minimal fact, conditional offer, redirect, boundary, tactical disclosure, and rehearse them until they are automatic. Third, simulated pressure testing. Run role-play scenarios with a peer or recorded prompt to practice the micro-delay and execute the counter-protocol under stress. Address hybrid and dynamic behaviors. Real people shift roles. An appeaser can become an interrogator under stress. Predators may feign appeasement to lure sympathy. Classify by dominant strategy, not momentary effect. When multiple archetypes operate in group settings, target the primary extractor, the person whose behavior most constrains your ambiguity, and neutralize their leverage first. Information hygiene. Never answer motive-exposing prompts without testing utility. Keep answers divisible and partial. Log behaviors to build a dossier on who extracts and how. This dossier is not gossip. It is reconnaissance that enables selection. Who remains in your inner circle, who gets constrained access, and who is relegated to outer orbit. End state. Archetype recognition turns emotional confusion into actionable choice. When you can name the operative across the table within 10 seconds, you no longer debate whether to explain. You enact the counter-protocol that preserves leverage, exposes intent, and forces selection. Chapter 4. The threat deepened. History, examples, human nature. Make the danger feel inevitable by linking explanation to predictable social mechanics. People operate on biases that convert your explanations into constraints. Attribution bias turns your words into personality assessments. Loss aversion anchors admissions and escalates penalties. Reciprocity obligations force returns. Social proof multiplies scrutiny. These cognitive mechanics are not moral judgments. They are deterministic systems that process data. Once you supply data about yourself, the system reorders incentives around that data. You become governable. Use 3 compact, archetypal vignettes to make the consequences visceral without relying on fragile specifics. The public apology spiral. A leader admits a mistake and begins explaining. Each explanation spawns follow-ups, clarifications, and demands for evidence. The narrative fractures. Opponents harvest fragments into a dossier that defines competence. What began as damage control becomes structural liability. The lesson. Explanation can cascade into contestable record-keeping that others will weaponize. The internal leak. In teams, overjustification exposes priorities, workflows, and contingency plans. Competitors reroute pressure to exposed seams. Gatekeepers erect new checkpoints informed by what they learned. Velocity dies, bureaucracy grows. Explanation thus converts agility into administrative drag. The interrogation gambit. An antagonist feigns curiosity, you answer. Your words become a map they use to preempt your next moves. Negotiations are reframed around the facts you supplied. The result is structural. Your generosity closes off options. Explain the multiplier effect. One detailed account becomes multiple frames. Public statements are echoed in private memos, meeting minutes, and social snippets. Each frame invites other actors, legal, reputational, operational, to act. Over time, your autonomy compresses under cumulative documentation. This is the invisible engine that moves from a single explanation to institutional constraint. Use metaphorical history to clarify without inventing specifics. Commanders who reveal plans die. Those who mask intent survive. In corporate logic, overcommunication of uncertainty invites micromanagement. Concise directives concentrate control. These comparisons are analogical tools that translate abstract cognitive biases into tactical intuition. Turn that intuition into practice with an empirical test. Identify 3 routine situations where you typically explain. For the next week, withhold explanation in those contexts and record responses. Document who rushes to fill, who escalates, and who yields. That experimental ledger converts hypothesis into proof. The results create urgency. When you see the pattern in your own life, the cost of the old habit becomes concrete. Psychologically, the aim here is to create enough unease that the viewer will choose to act. The cost of habitual explaining accrues invisibly until it becomes a decisive barrier. Your job is to make that accrual visible and immediate. You want the viewer to feel the slow leak of agency turning into a sudden, avoidable displacement, and then to adopt the protocols that prevent it. Conclude this chapter by framing the stakes as selection pressure. Systems select for fewer explanations because they simplify governance. People who conserve narrative cost become more attractive to decision makers. Those who explain excessively are priced out by their own trace. The consequence is not judgment, it is survival calculus. Chapter 5, Tactical Response, the New Protocol. This chapter is your field manual. Protocols turn strategy into habit. When trained and rehearsed, they remove moral ambiguity and emotional drift from moments that used to cost you leverage. Below are physical rules, universal verbal primitives, environment-specific tactics, escalation levers, and a practice regimen. Execute them until the posture is automatic. Core posture rules: physical plus mental, neutral face, controlled breathing. Micro-expressions are data for predators. Remove them. Asterisk posture equals closed authority. Slight lean back, hands anchored. Open palms invite negotiation. Keep hands steady on a pen or table. Asterisk voice equals steady, low register, clipped cadence. Avoid trailing qualifiers like I guess or maybe. Asterisk timing equals 3-second opcode. Inhale, count to 3, exhale. That beat turns panic into deliberation and signals control. Universal verbal primitives, memorize and make them default. A minimal fact, that's not for discussion. Asterisk boundary statement, I won't justify that. Asterisk conditional offer, I'll explain if this yields X. Asterisk redirect probe, why do you need that? Asterisk tactical disclosure, single clause admission tied to an actionable consequence. Yes, we delayed, we corrected by X, and future inquiries should be routed to Y. Environment-specific protocols. Meetings/teams. Preparation is non-negotiable. Anticipate explanatory pressure points and prepare one-line facts and one conditional offer per expected query. If asked to defend a past decision, issue minimal fact, then gate the rationale behind measurable criteria. Example, we prioritized X. If you want the rationale, provide the decision metric we should meet. This converts extraction into concrete negotiation. If pressed further, use redirect probe to surface the asker's incentive. One-on-one relationships. Replace narrative rationales with consequence-based boundaries. Use boundary statement plus action. I won't explain why I'll be late. If punctuality is essential, set a rule. Notify me 2 hours prior. Don't explain emotional motives under bait. Use micro-delay and minimal fact to defuse. Negotiations/interviews. Open with strategic opacity. Present outcomes, not motives. Use tactical disclosure only when it unlocks a concession. Convert history into forward currency. History is irrelevant here. Commitments are the currency. What do you commit? If pressured for backstory, require that the other party state the decision metric before you comply. Social media/public statements. Keep public language declarative and short. Avoid threads and long explanations. They create an audit trail. If attacked, close the channel. That's incorrect. Contact my office with specifics. Shift extraction into a controlled setting. Escalation levers and cost imposition. Named consequence. Attach predictable costs to continued extraction. Pause decisions, require agendas, or reallocate attention. Example, if you press for justifications, this is postponed until the criteria are provided. Asterisk visibility control. Move sensitive talks offline to prevent public trace. Asterisk ledgering. Keep concise written notes of who asked what and when. This becomes deterrence and strategic data. Scripts. Rehearse these exact lines until tone is neutral. That's not relevant. Asterisk. I won't explain. Asterisk. State your objective. Asterisk. If clarification is required, provide value in return. Asterisk. I'll answer once you make this request productive. Practice regimen. Daily micro-delay drills until automatic. Asterisk. Rehearse scripts in front of a mirror or record audio to neutralize tone. Asterisk. Weekly role plays. 1 appeaser, 1 predator. Time responses and refine. End state. The protocols make restraint mechanical. You will no longer debate whether to withhold. Withholding becomes the default behavior executed without drama. The posture conserves leverage, exposes intent, and forces selection. Chapter 6, Identity Death and Replacement. Become the sovereign version. Tactics without identity are temporary. If your core self still believes, I must be understood, the protocols will eventually fail. Identity must be realigned. This chapter prescribes a controlled demolition of the old identity, the justifier, and grafting a new one, the sovereign. This is surgical work, precise, procedural, and measurable. Define the justifier. He believes legitimacy derives from narrative. He assumes being understood equalizes risk. He equates transparency with safety. The justifier was conditioned by systems that reward compliance and punish opacity. It is not a moral condemnation, it is an operational diagnosis. The goal is to neutralize this reflex through 3 redefinitions and ritual practice. Redefinitions to internalize. I must be understood. I choose when to be understood. Make access conditional. Understanding is a privilege you grant when it secures strategic return. Silence means weakness. Silence is unpriced leverage. Each unstated detail preserves optional futures. Silence becomes stored optionality. Good intentions must be visible. Outcomes are currency. Intent is unverifiable. Outcomes are final. Speak in output, not in motive. Ritualize the transition with simple, repeatable practices. The ledger cut. List the 3 contexts where you over-explain most: work, family, social channels. Next to each, write the exact boundary line you will use, a minimal fact or boundary statement. Keep this list accessible. For the next 14 days, every time you successfully withhold, record it as a cut. Over 2 weeks, the ledger becomes proof. The old identity's influence visibly weakens. The silence oath, operational. A short declaration you say before high-friction interactions. I do not narrate my decisions. I set conditions and observe responses. This is a procedural reminder, not therapy. Repeat it before meetings, negotiations, and public posts. Behavior first installation. Identity follows action. Do the posture work. Leave questions unanswered without discomfort. State decisions without narrative. Allow others to fill silence and expose themselves. Outcomes will retrain effective responses. Expect withdrawal symptoms. Anxiety, imagined reputational loss, fear of escalation. Do not argue with these feelings. Treat them as residues of the old identity and continue the protocol. Social sorting is inevitable. Some who profited from your explainability will resist. Their pressure is diagnostic. They reveal that your transparency advantaged them. The sovereign identity permits selection. Adapters remain, extractors fall away. That is acceptable. Guardrails to prevent backsliding. Never explain under time pressure. Demand specificity before divulging motives. Never explain to preserve an image rather than a position. Measurement and reinforcement. Use the ledger to measure change. Each successful withheld explanation is reinforcement. After 14 days, audit. Have the frequency and intensity of extraction attempts dropped in at least 2 of the 3 targeted contexts? If yes, institutionalize boundaries, meeting rules, email templates, response windows. If not, intensify cost imposition. End state description. The sovereign is not mysterious. He is economical, precise, and consequential. He speaks in decisions, conditions, and outcomes. Silence is his default modality. The result is stability, fewer crises, reduced micromanagement, clearer incentives. Identity change is the final mechanism that makes silence inexorable rather than optional. Chapter 7, Final Warning plus Elite CTA. This is the closing instrument, not a plea but a binary induction. The choice is stark: continue explaining and be slowly bled of agency, or adopt the sovereign posture and reclaim control. The final warning enumerates the accruing costs and then offers a tight, non-negotiable conversion protocol, the sovereign trial, that produces measurable evidence in 14 days. Enumerate the consequences with precision. Immediate friction. Explanations invite further questions and longer approvals. Your calendar fills with clarifying meetings. Administrative tax rises and productive time falls. Asterisk reputational leakage. Every explanation creates a trace. Traces become citations and citations become reasons for audits and second-guessing. The accumulation of detail becomes a vector for displacement. Asterisk selection loss. Decision-makers prefer minimal transaction costs. People who demand less explanation and deliver outcomes are chosen. Over time, explanatory costs price you out of high-leverage roles. These are not threats, they are selection mechanics. The social system favors predictable, low-explanation actors because they reduce governance costs. If you are not that actor, the system will reassign your role. The sovereign trial, a conversion protocol you can run immediately. Day 0, setup. Create a ledger listing the 3 contexts where you over-explain. Beside each, write the exact line you will use instead, one minimal fact or boundary statement. State your rule to one trusted peer as accountability, not for permission but for witness. Days 1 to 14, execution. For every interaction in those contexts, apply the micro-delay and use only the prepared line or a minimal fact. For each instance, record who asked, what line you used, and the behavioral response: rush to fill, escalation, retreat. This is reconnaissance, not confession. Day 7, midpoint review. Identify the single person who most accelerates explanatory extraction. Decide, reframe their access or reduce it. Their pattern is now visible. Day 14, outcome audit. Compile the ledger. If 2 of 3 contexts show measurable reduction in extraction attempts or clearer boundaries, institutionalize changes. Meeting rules, email templates, restricted contact windows. Immediate elite CTA, what the committed do now. Begin the sovereign trial within 24 hours. Delay is extraction. Implement one immediate cost imposition in your highest leverage context. For example, require agendas 48 hours before meetings, cap emails at 100 words, or move grievance discussion to scheduled private channels. Apply consequences once. Build a 3-person ledger. An ally for accountability, one neutral for calibration, one extractor to monitor. Update weekly. Return with the ledger entries and results so the strategy can be refined. Those who run the trial and produce data join the small set who convert posture into permanent selection advantage. Closing phrasing to deliver in content or to yourself. I do not explain. I set terms. Say it once before high-friction interactions and let it function as an operational rule. This is not about cruelty, it is about survival. Social systems will regulate anomalies. If you continue to supply explanatory currency freely, you will be selected out of decisive spaces. Adopt the protocols, run the trial, gather data, and institutionalize the sovereign posture. The math is simple. Conserve information, impose predictable costs, and the world will stop demanding your narratives.